Yeah, so it's hard to think of the exact moment that I learned about climate change, but I studied a lot of science at, at school, particularly high school. One moment that was very impactful for me was when we had some visitors from the Australian Youth Climate Coalition come to my school and give a presentation about the work that they do. I was, um, yeah, very strongly. I was inspired by them, and so from then on, I joined the Australian Youth Climate Coalition and did quite a number of years of activism with them. And part of that was when I came to realize the social issues of climate change was working with the Pacific Islander groups at my university. And they told us stories of their homes and how it was being flooded constantly and at this present moment. And that brought the realization that climate change is not a future issue. It's happening right now and it's affecting people right now. And that sort of was brought even closer to my doorstep and increased my understanding when Australia was impacted by the bushfires of 2019 and 2020. That really demonstrated that it's climate change is here, it's happening now, it's affecting us right now, and it simply can't be ignored. So the United Nations Environment Programme has this initiative called the Global Peatlands Initiative. And the point of it is to bring awareness to the public and policymakers about the enormous mitigation effects and also mitigation and adaptation effects, and to bring peatlands as a key method of nature-based solution to be brought into our national and international climate policies. Climate change affects peatlands by exacerbating their drying and release of carbon dioxide. I started studying masters to further my knowledge on policy mechanisms to incorporate nature-based solutions such as ecosystem conservation and restoration into national and international climate policy. Really important to the fight against climate change because they're actually the ecosystem with the world's largest terrestrial organic carbon stock. And so they, in their healthy state, when they're completely waterlogged, they are extremely important for our mitigation efforts as well as adaptation efforts for climate change, because they also pose flooding mitigation and a whole lot of mechanisms that can support us in fighting against climate change. So a lot of people are surprised to know that peatlands actually cover 3% of the globe's land surface, and they include types, not only temperate peatlands, but there's also tropical peatlands and permafrost peatlands. So when people think of peatlands, they usually think of the bogs in Scotland and the UK. Those are temperate peatlands, but there's also the largest peatlands in the world are actually tropical peatlands, and they exist predominantly in Indonesia, the Congo Basin, and also in parts of South America and near the Amazon area. And the peatlands that hold the most carbon, the biggest stock that they found is in the Congo Basin. So it's about 30 gigatons of carbon is stored in those pristine peatlands, and we want to keep them that way. So the main threats to peatlands, as with many other ecosystems, are humans. So peatlands have traditionally been drained to turn into agricultural land, as well as in some countries they use the peat itself for fertilizers and also for burning for electricity. There's also areas of peatlands, probably most well known globally are the peatlands in Indonesia, because they are the soil which palm oil is grown on. So those peatlands have been drained so that the land is no longer waterlogged, and so that that palm can be planted. But by planting them, as well as all the other activities that drain peatlands, that's releasing an enormous amount of carbon back into our atmosphere. And in addition to that, it's highly prone to fire. So you may be aware of the Indonesian fires, which go on for months. That's because the fire managed to go under the ground because the peat is so deep. So it can burn on for months and release enormous amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. Climate change should be a critical component of every school curriculum, and children should be learning about not only the physical climate science, but also the practical and tangible solutions we have in terms of mitigation and adaptation. So in addition to that, so they should be, in addition to that, they should also be taught about the dangers of industries that are currently exacerbating climate change and how we need to transition away from those industries. Most important thing we can do locally is speak to our local politicians. Even though it's very important to act on an individual level to reduce your carbon footprint as well, the most significant and impactful thing we can do is speak to our local politicians about climate change, about solutions, and asking them to take that knowledge and that sense of urgency up to the national and international leaders so that they will enact quality and effective climate policies.